Guy and his wife are at the Albert Malls, and at the Williams-Sonoma, they were having a show where they were showing the pots and pans and all the stuff they would do. And if you stayed and watched it, you got a free whisk. Well, it just so happens the guy collected whisk, and he had a room full of them. He loved whisk. He had hundreds of them, and he realized he was going to get free whisk, and so he decided he was going to stay. His wife was doing some more shopping, and she came up to him and she said, "It's time to go." He said, No. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to listen to this little pot and pan show, and I'm going to get my free whisk. She said, "You do not need another whisk. You got hundreds of them at the house. You got a whole room full of them. That is so unnecessary. You do not need another one." He said, "I'm getting my whisk." So he stayed, watched the pot and pan show, and sure enough, at the end of it, they gave out those free whisks, but you know, they're cheap little things. They weren't put together well. He got his. He was so excited. He was walking out, and he opened it up, but because it was so cheap, one of the wires flipped up and hit him in the eye. Well, he tripped over the curb. Truck came by, hit him, killed him. You know what the moral of the story is? Don't take unnecessary whisk. That's the moral of the story. Now, my wife told me to tell you guys that she has been to a lot. I'm talking a lot. In my line of work, she has been to a lot of fellowship meals. A lot of church eat churches. And she said today ranked one of the very highest she has had. And now she doesn't pass that out with any type of regularity at all. I mean, when she says that, she means it. She got a hold of a homemade roll and some homemade fried chicken and a deviled egg that, I mean, just apparently it was off the chart in her mind. And the banana pudding was outstanding. Now, the elders have already given me a check for this particular meeting. It is not enough to keep you guys awake through this lesson. I've never been paid up because I don't know how to do that. I don't know how I can keep you awake, but I'm going to let you work on staying awake, and we're going to answer this question. What is a question that's important enough to deal with or to damage or hurt a person's soul? Now, let me show you what I mean by that. Jesus goes into a city of Samaria, and a woman comes to him, and, well, actually, he's there at the well, and she comes to the well, and she perceives that he's a prophet, and she asked him a question that she was really struggling with. She said, "Where do you think we ought to worship? On this mountain or in Jerusalem? Because our fathers say this is the mountain on which to worship, and you Jews say it's got to be Jerusalem." Now, has where you worship ever been a salvation issue in your mind? Has the building or the geographical location of your worship ever been something that would cause you to have spiritual problems? No, it hadn't probably. But to that lady, it was a very serious issue. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon is something that you might not think is all that serious of an issue, but I think what I'm going to show you is that actually it is. You might not recognize this particular... I'm going to get in here in just a second. Wait for it. What happened? Did we lose it? That right there. If I were to ask you what kind of dinosaur that is, the word dinosaur means fearfully great, terribly great lizard. If I were to ask you what kind that is, you might be able to tell me that's an oviraptor. Let me tell you why that is not a good name for this dinosaur. Here's why. They found an oviraptor, and it had close to it a egg that was cracked and broken, and they said, "Hey, we think that this dinosaur steals eggs from other dinosaurs, and we're going to call it an oviraptor," which means egg stealer, and so that's what they named it. Well, later they found out that the egg that they thought it was stealing happened to be its own egg, and that oviraptor was really protecting her nest. But still, she's called the oviraptor. Now, did you ever think that dinosaurs would be a sole issue with people in the church? I never did. In fact, if you were to say, "Hey, there are going to be some people that have spiritual problems with dinosaurs," I would have said, "Are you kidding me?" But here's what I'm telling you about this. The oviraptor is misnamed. There's a lot of stuff that you hear about dinosaurs that just isn't right at all. Now, I'll tell you what we've heard in the church that hasn't been right. Every congregation I go to, and I mention dinosaurs or talk to them about them, somebody in the generation just before me, somebody from about 45 years old to about 60 years old will say, "Yeah, we talked about dinosaurs when I was growing up, and here's what the elders or the preacher or my parents told me. They told me they never existed." told me that they were just made up by evolutionists to teach evolution, and that dinosaurs were not real creatures, and that I shouldn't spend time thinking about them because they never really existed in the first place. That's what was taught. You know what happens when a kid who is real interested in dinosaurs is told dinosaurs never existed, and then they go out to maybe somewhere like Wyoming or Montana, and they get to go on a dinosaur dig, and they dig a fossil of a huge Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth out of the ground that's 13 inches long, and they realize that, hey, at some time in the past, there was a creature that had a head 5.5 feet long and that had a mouthful of razor-sharp, 60 serrated steak knife-like teeth in its mouth. What happens when they see that? And you told them that they never existed. They're going to have a problem? Okay, maybe Jurassic Park. You've seen it. Seen Jurassic Park, and maybe you've seen Jurassic Park #1. It was the first movie, and there were these big, about 6.5-foot dinosaurs that supposedly were real smart, and they could run super fast, and they jumped all over everything, and they scared the people. And people had shotguns with belt-feed buckshot on them. And still they were having trouble with these 6.5-foot. They had this humongous claw on their foot, that those big velociraptors. You remember the velociraptor that was on Jurassic Park 1? Well, let me show you what the velociraptor really looks like. That's him right there. He's about 3 feet tall. He's got he's got a claw there, but it's nothing like what they showed in the movie. You know, they blew that velociraptor up 400% to put him in Jurassic Park #1. Now, why in the world would they do that? They knew he wasn't that big. They thought it sounded cooler to call this creature a velociraptor and let him be 6.5 feet tall. They would do it because if you got a belt feed, buckshot, 12 gauge, and there's one of these running around, who's scared of that? Well, not me. But if he's 6.5 feet tall and he can jump 12 feet in the air and has a claw that will rip you in half if he barely touches you, well, that makes for a scarier story, doesn't it? Now, here's what I'm telling you. Yeah, there's some stuff that you're getting that's decent from the modern media about dinosaurs, but there's some stuff that you're not. Now, why in the world do we deal with dinosaurs? You listen to the KJ, again from Oklahoma. It's so scary. I'm battling this with my 15, almost 16-year-old right now. I should have started earlier, but the things that affected me don't affect him and vice versa. Dinosaurs were the beginning of our problems. I'm so afraid of losing him to the world. You mean to tell me that there is a mom who is losing her 15-year-old because of what he learned about dinosaurs when he was 7? Yeah. And what was it that he learned about dinosaurs? Here's what he learned. Some 240 million years ago, dinosaurs began to evolve from lower animals. They ruled the planet for about 180 million years or so, and they died out 65 million years ago. This is what they're told. And then humans, when did humans come along? Supposedly about 5 million years ago. So dinosaurs and humans, according to the evolutionary scenario, are separated by 60 million years. Now, why is that a problem to the Bible-believing Christian? You go back to Genesis and you start reading chapters 1, 2, and 3, and you read where on the first day God creates light, all the way down to the 6th day where he creates land-living animals. Were dinosaurs land-living animals? Yes. On what day did God create man? Day 6. And then you'll remember maybe that God creates Adam from the dust of the ground, and he breathes into him the breath of life, and then he calls all of the animals to Adam for him to name them. Well, I was talking to a group of kids the other day, and one of them wanted to know how in the world Adam could name all those animals. And what he wanted to know is his dog was named Spot. How did Adam name all the dogs and all the cats? And I said, no, he didn't name every one of them. He didn't name this one Spot and this one Fluffy and this one Brownie and this. No, he named dog kind and cattle kind and bird kind or etc. He named huge groups of them. Now, but if God brought all the land-living animals before Adam, what group would have been in the land-living animals that would have been paraded before Adam? Cows would have. Why? Why do you think cattle would have been there? Because God created all land-living animals on day 6. What else would have been there? Dog kind would have been. Cat kind would have been. What about dinosaurs? They would have been. And when Adam looked throughout all those creatures and he didn't see one that was suitable to help him, God caused him to go into a great sleep, and he took one of those ribs and he created Eve. Now, according to Genesis chapter 1, you've got all land-living animals created on day 6. All kinds of them. Dinosaurs were land-living animals, so what day did God create dinosaurs? 6. Were dinosaurs and humans alive at the exact same time? Yet they were made on the same day, and they lived from creation until dinosaurs went extinct together with humans. Now, that's not what you're told in textbooks, and that's why if a kid picks up a book about dinosaurs and reads it, and then goes to the Genesis account of creation and finds out that God creates all land-living animals, and dinosaurs were land-living animals, and they're created on the same day. Well, you know, for years people have said creationists and Bible believers have a problem with dinosaurs. Your problem is it's supposedly a scientific proven fact that they died 65 million years ago. Well, what I'm going to show you, very much like the woman there at the well who had a big problem with where to worship, some people have had a big problem with dinosaurs. But the truth is, they are not a problem at all for the Bible-believing Christian. And I'm going to show you why. Everything we know historically, biblically, and scientifically fits perfectly with the idea that God created man and dinosaurs together. And I'm going to show you how that's the case. If you were to read this Magic School Bus page, Magic School Bus is a PBS public broadcasting. It's free on your television. Look what he says. Well, this story is make-believe. There were no dinosaurs in the time of what? Cave people. Now, that's another issue we could deal with. Cave people. You've seen them on TV. They're brute-browed. They're knuckle-dragging. They can't even talk. They just grunt. You know those cavemen that when they see an attractive cave woman that they like, they go whack her over the head and drag her back to the cave. You know, that's the caveman idea. When God created Adam, was he intelligent enough to talk? Was he intelligent enough to name all the animals? Were there some people in the past that lived in caves? Absolutely, positively. Were there any people in the past that evolved from lower animals and were in some type of middle monkey human stage that were grunters that couldn't even talk? No. It's not a biblical picture at all. And notice what they're saying here. Flory says no people ever saw a dinosaur. When early humans appeared on Earth, dinosaurs had been dead for millions of years. Is that true biblically? It's not true biblically. God created dinosaurs. God created cattle. God created dogs. God created cats, and he put them all on day 6. So, as we start looking at this, Dr. Kitcher's anti-creationist book says if we could find solid evidence that dinosaurs and humans lived together, that would shake the foundations of evolutionary theory. So the question is, what's the Bible say about dinosaurs? Well, let's have a fun little exercise here. You pick up your Bible and I say, all right, everybody turn in your Bible to the page that talks about dinosaurs. Now, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Okay, all right, let's try it again. Turn in your Bible to the page that talks about kangaroos. Not there either, is it? Okay, koala bears. Turn your Bibles to the passage on duck-billed platypuses. Turn your Bibles to the passage on... Okay, there are lots of animals that aren't mentioned in the Bible. Now, here's what's interesting to me. We say, okay, yeah, we can't find a passage that says dinosaur. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. You know why? Because the word is an English word. It was invented in 1841. It means terribly great or fearfully great lizard. Do you know in the Old Testament there is a passage that says, this animal is unclean to you, the large lizard. Do you know what the word dinosaur means? A fearfully great or very large lizard. So, if you were to say, is the word dinosaur in the Bible? No, not the actual term, because it's an English word. The Bible was written not in English, but in Hebrew and Greek. And it was written 3,500 years before the English word was ever invented. And so are we going to find the word dinosaur in the Bible? No, absolutely not. Now, next question is, do we need to? I mean, if we're going to prove that God created dinosaurs, do you even have to find that word in the Bible? No, because here's what you can do. Exodus 20, verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them. What would that include? Dinosaurs. Would that include koala bears? Yeah. Would it include kangaroos? Absolutely. Octopuses? Sure. Hippopotamuses? Yeah. Just because the Bible doesn't say the word doesn't mean that it doesn't talk about the creature. If we just wanted to say, in 6 days God made everything, would that mean dinosaurs too? The answer is yes. So is this a scriptural biblical idea? Sure, absolutely. But I think we can do a little better than that. Fact of the matter is, there is a description of a creature that, work with me here. This got pulled up. Look, that's so slow. Why? All right. Oh, almost. I'm getting there. Anyway, apparently I've got they pulled over into Keynote from PowerPoint. It's goofing up on me a tad. But here's what you got. Job is talking to God and says, I don't think you're treating me fair. And I think if you will have a discussion with me, then you will see that my point is valid. And so in an unprecedented meeting with a human, God comes down to talk to Job, and he says, Job, got some questions for you. I'm paraphrasing. He says, where were you when I hung the foundation of the world on nothing? What's Job's thought on that? Wasn't around. Okay, I don't know that one. Job, can you feed all of the animals every single day? Can't do that either. Job, and he starts asking him about 50 questions, none of which are designed to get an answer. They're all designed to show Job how little Job is compared to how big God is. And they're all designed to show Job that God knows what he's doing. And then he comes to this creature and he says, Job, look now at the behemoth. Now, watch the little phrase right after it says behemoth, which I made along with you. Now, I'm convinced that there's not an accidental word in the text of the Bible. Why in the world would God say, look at the behemoth that I made along with you? Here was God's point to Job. There's a creature that you can look at because he's living at the same time you're living, and his name is the behemoth. Now, we got a problem with this term behemoth. You know how there's a difference between a translation and a transliteration. A translation is when there's a word in one language and you know the meaning of it in another language, and so you bring it over. I don't know if you know much Spanish. You're supposed to be able to roll your R's if you can talk any kind of decent Spanish, but I can't. And so the word for dog in Spanish is perro, and it's P-E-R-R-O. Now, dog and perro don't sound anything alike, but that's the translated word for dog. This is not a translated word. It's a transliterated word, and here's what that means. If you don't know what the animal is or what the word is in another language, you just bring over the sounds and throw it in the new language and say, you figure it out. Okay, great. So in Hebrew, guess what the word behemoth sounds like? I'm going to pronounce it for you. It's a real hard Hebrew pronunciation. Behemoth. That's what it sounds like in Hebrew. That's what it sounds like in English. You know why it sounds almost identical in English as it does in Hebrew? They don't know what the word is. There's this huge creature that they call a behemoth. Now, 1901 translators, I like 1901. American Standard 1901 translation, good one, no problem. But this is the text. This is the translator's note. Now, the translators in 1901 said this is supposed to be either an elephant or a hippopotamus. Now, before we go further, let me ask you a question. If it was something bigger than an elephant or a hippopotamus in 1901, do you think they would have listed it? Yeah, why in the world did you list elephant or hippopotamus? What's the biggest land-living creatures you've got alive in 1901? If there's something bigger, they would have listed, but there wasn't anything. And so they said, okay, elephant or hippopotamus. Well, okay. Let's see if this matches the description. Eats grass like an ox. Elephant, hippo, eats plants. Okay. Strength is in his hips. His power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. You know, when you look in the Bible at the term cedar, it always means something really, really big. The righteous shall flourish. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Right there. Indeed, Assyria was a cedar of high stature. Yet it was I who destroyed them, right? Whose height was like the height of the cedar. One of the highest branches of the high cedar. It's big. Every time you read about a cedar, it's humongous. Okay, great. This is a picture of an oriental cedar, if I understand it right. It takes 6 or 8 men just holding hands to go all the way around the base of the thing. Now, whatever this behemoth is, he swings his tail like a what? Like a cedar. Now, what did the American Standard translators say it must have been? Elephant or a hippopotamus? All right, let's see how that works. Does an elephant or a hippopotamus swing his tail like a cedar? There's the tail, doesn't look much like a cedar. There's the hippo tail, doesn't look much like a cedar. Here's a brachiosaurus. Does that tail look more like a cedar? Absolutely positively. Now, why in the world would there be a creature that we know once existed, and we know it swung its tail like a cedar, but we wouldn't say that that behemoth matches it better than an elephant, and that elephant's got a tail that doesn't even look like a decent switch that your mom would let you go pick off of the tree to let you spank her with. So let her spank you with. That'd be real tragic. We'd get rid of the switch and go for the board on that one, I'm afraid. Swings its tail like a cedar? Well, these huge grass-eating, plant-eating dinosaurs match the description perfectly. And hey, what's God's point? God's point is, you look at the behemoth and you see my power. Now, interestingly, in Egypt, they had harpooned the hippopotamus day. Hippopotamus were easy to kill. They did not have harpoon the Brachiosaurus tank because it was so big. Now, if God is going to use the behemoth to show his amazing power, would he use something like that, or would he use a hippopotamus? Now, let's ask this question. I was listening to us sing our song, verse 2 of Hallelujah, Praise Jehovah. The last section says, of verse 2, from the earth, O praise Jehovah, all ye floods, ye dragons, all. What's the original point of any animal that has ever lived on this earth? Why did God put it here? To show God's power. That's the point of every animal that's ever existed on this earth. Now, if dinosaurs existed, and we know that they did, what was the point of a dinosaur? To show God's power. And yet, what have we let people who teach evolution and atheism do with dinosaurs? We've let them take them and use them to teach stuff that's wrong and to take away from God's power and glory. God was pointing Job to the behemoth, which was probably a huge dinosaur that swung his tail like a cedar, and he was saying, look at that creature and look how awesome I am. And yet we haven't done that with these dinosaurs because we've let people take them from us and say, look at that creature, look how awesome chance, mindless processes are that bring stuff into existence without a brain. So let's take them back. Let's use them for their original purpose. What's history have to say about dinosaurs? Well, I just read you that passage from the verse that said, all ye dragons. Notice, ancient stories of reptiles, they weren't called dinosaurs. They were called dragons. The term dinosaur wasn't coined until 1842. Ancients used the word dragon to refer to any large serpent or reptile, whether real or mythological. Have some legends been embellished? Sure. I mean, does a 5-year-old go out and catch a bass that's about this big, and by the time he's told the story about 6 times, it's now about this big and almost swallowed the boat? Absolutely, positively. But what was it based on? A real fish? Are some of the dragon legends embellished? Absolutely, positively. But here's what you find. When you start reading about dragons in ancient literature, they put them in the list of real animals. Deer, dragon, right down the line. And they don't flinch at calling them real animals, and they say so-and-so saw a dragon on the bank of the Tigris, etc. Now, let me show you what's interesting about that. Every single culture across the world has dragon legends. They couldn't have copied each other. Some of them were separated by 1,000 years. Some of them separated by 3,000 miles or more. And yet all of these different cultures have legends about dragons. Are found in myths and legends of cultures all over the world. These are evolutionists. People all over the world have believed in dragons. There's one creature remembered in the legends of almost every human culture that's ever existed. And let me show you what's interesting about this. They go back ages and ages. They recently found this. Discovered in South Dakota. You know what they called it? Draco Rex. You know what Draco Rex means? Dragon King. And here's what they said. This is a dinosaur that looks just like a dragon. Okay, why in the world would you find a dinosaur that looks just like a dragon? Because folks have been talking about dinosaurs for years. They just hadn't called them dinosaurs because we didn't even have the word until 1842. What did they call them? Dragon. And we've got a dinosaur and the fossil of a dinosaur that they called a Draco Rex, meaning king, tyrant, or dragon king. So what are we saying here? Not only does the Bible talk about dinosaurs, but history talks about dinosaurs. And here's what the placard on Draco Rex says. When we saw this creature's head, we weren't sure what kind of dinosaur it was. Its spiky horns, bumps, and long muzzle looked more like a dragon. Yeah, of course it looked more like a dragon. Why? Because it is a dragon, because that's what they used to call them before we invented the word dinosaur. It's a new type of dinosaur that looks like a dragon. Wow. The idea that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur, that just simply is not right. It's not biblical, it's not historical, and it is not scientific. I could go through several of these things and show you some evidence where ancient people from several hundred, sometimes several thousands of years ago, carved things on walls and various different places that every unbiased person who saw the carving would tell you that is a dinosaur. Here's what's interesting to me about this one. This guy's an evolutionist, but he says there's a petroglyph in the Natural Bridges National Monument that bears a startling resemblance to a dinosaur. Now let's look at the word startling. When I was a kid, we lived in East Tennessee, and one day my dad, who was here with us last night, brought home a 6-foot-long black snake. I don't know if you remember this, Mom. I tell this story all the time. And this 6-foot-long black snake, my dad thought it would make a good pet for us for a little while. And so me and my two brothers were playing with it. And we decided we're going to put it in an aquarium that doesn't have any water in it, just a dry aquarium. We put a rock over the top. And we get up the next morning, and it's not there. Well, so we look around the little, kind of the building, the room that had been kind of built on, as I remember, to the house. But there's a little place under the door that looked like it could have gotten out. And so we thought, well, it's gotten out. About 3 days later, my mom goes into her closet to get her favorite pair of high heel shoes. She screams because she goes looking for a pair of high heel shoes, and she finds a 6-foot-long black snake. Yes. Do you know what she was? Startled. She was startled. Do you know what the word startled means? You're looking for something, or you're not looking for something, and you find it where you're not looking for it. How many of you ladies are expecting to go home and put your shoes in your closet and find a 6-foot-long black snake? None? Would you be startled if you found one? Probably. Now, why in the world would an evolutionist be startled at finding a carving that looks exactly like a dinosaur on an Indian wall carving that's 1,000 years old? Why would that be startling to an evolutionist? Because that evolutionist all his life has been told that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. And if those Indians actually did carve something that looked exactly like a dinosaur, then that means they probably saw one, and he's been told all his life that they couldn't have seen one. And so he's going in looking for something, and he's finding something totally different than he was looking for, isn't he? Yeah, that would be startling to an evolutionist. Not that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. Wrong. 1187. A guy by the name of Jehoram VII started carving these walls for his mother as basically a Mother's Day present. And on those walls from 1187 AD, there's a carving that looks just exactly like a stegosaurus. And yet, when the evolutionist comes to this and they say, well, yeah, we can't say it's fake because it matches all the other stuff. I'll tell you what we think that is. We think it's a wild pig with bushes behind it. Well, those sure are some fancy bushes, aren't they? And they're manicured perfectly. I mean, you must have had some real good lawn care people to get bushes to look just like that behind this wild pig with bushes behind it. Why in the world wouldn't they say that's a stegosaurus? Because if they do say that's a stegosaurus, they're going to be startled, aren't they? Found a Tyrannosaurus Rex femur. They were moving the Tyrannosaurus Rex femur that's supposed to be 70 million years old, and they realized it wasn't completely fossilized. They broke it open and had soft tissue in it that was stretchy. You could pull it apart and it would snap back together. The lady who found the stuff thought she was going to lose her job for announcing that she found soft tissue in a 70 million year old Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil, so she didn't tell anybody. She tested it 5 times and realized, no, it's soft tissue, straight up. So she then reports it to the world, and instead of saying, hey, we've gotten this wrong, no way soft tissue lasts 70 million years, you know what they did say? Wow, we didn't know soft tissue could last 70 million years. No, that's interesting. Soft tissue can't last 70 billion years. Instead of correcting their wrong ideas, they just kept bulldozing right on through the evidence, which we see happen so very often. So the question, where did the dinosaurs go? If they're not here now, where are they? That's a real good question. Where did the large 3-toed sloths go? Mammals. Used to be about 10 feet tall. Where are they? Extinct. Where did the woolly mammoths go? Extinct. Where did the saber-toothed tigers go? Extinct. Where did the dodo birds go? Now, dodo birds, you can see why they're extinct. Dodo birds were about the size of turkeys, except a little fatter. They weren't scared of people, and they tasted like chicken. You know, 1 or 2 good potluck meals at a congregation of any size at all is going to wipe out the whole dodo bird population in that area. If I understand it right, you get some sailors that land on an island where there's some dodo birds. They walk up to the dodo birds like a whack. Sailors hit them on the head, take them back to the boat, eat them, think, wow, that was delicious. I think we'll have that again tomorrow night. And so they do, and now you don't have any dodo birds. Yeah, they go extinct. Stuff does on a regular basis. In fact, do you know what? I just read an article, had nothing to do with dinosaurs. It said these are the 2 categories of animals that go extinct the fastest. The biggest ones and the smallest ones. Were dinosaurs some of the biggest ones? Absolutely positive. They were some of the very biggest ones, and they go extinct first. Did you know that if we had every animal from creation, a source just timed out? Brandon's like, yeah, okay, we'll get to it. All right. If you had 100 animals from creation, do you know how many you have left right now? If I understand the stats correctly, 98% of all animals that have ever lived have gone extinct. That means when you look into the fossil record, you see hundreds and thousands of animals that are not alive today. 98% of all the animals that have ever lived have gone extinct. That means we have 2% of all the animals that have ever lived still on this planet. So if at creation you drew a big circle around 100 animals, how many of them would you have right now? 2. Is it a surprise that they've gone extinct? No, and here's the other thing. They've just kind of defined the dinosaurs out of existence. I mean, if the word means fearfully great or terribly great lizard, are there still some really big lizards around? Would you say an alligator is a pretty big lizard? Yeah, sure. Okay, we're getting there. We are. Found an alligator the other day. It was 2,000 pounds, 24 feet long. 24 feet is about 8 good steps. So starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From here to there, they found an alligator that weighed 2,000 pounds, weighed a whole ton. Is that bigger than that little 3-foot velociraptor? Okay, which of these is more of a dinosaur? Which is more of a terribly great lizard, the velociraptor or this thing? Komodo Dragon. They grow to be 10 feet long, some of them even a little longer than that. Here's what I love about a Komodo Dragon. They can eat 80% of their body weight in 15 minutes, kind of like a 16-year-old teenage boy playing football. Amazing. They walk into a meal weighing 100 pounds. You know what they walk into a meal leaving after, walk out of the meal? They eat 80% of their own body weight in a single sitting in 15 minutes. Walk in weighing 100 pounds, they walk out weighing 180. And they eat everything. If it's a wild pig, they eat the hoof, they eat the hair, they eat everything. Scarf it down, don't even chew. Now, that's a pretty fearfully great lizard, isn't it? 10 foot long, goes in weighing 100 pounds, comes out weighing 180. That's a lot bigger than some of the dinosaurs, like a Coelophysis that was about 12 inches long. Some of them were the size of a chicken. The average dinosaur size was really only the size of a rhinoceros. So, they've kind of defined dinosaurs out. Are there still some really, really, really big lizards? Sure, absolutely. So here's our question, where'd they go? Well, some of them just went extinct. But if you've got some Indians only about 1,000 years ago carving some on a wall, that means some of them lived through the... Well, let's see what we've got. This is the Dinosaur National Monument. If you were to go to the Dinosaur National Monument and look on the side of this wall, there's no wall. There's no brick, there's no mortar, there's no sheetrock. You go in, on this side there is brick, mortar, etc. On this side, here's what you see. This is all you see. It's built onto the cliff. As you look here, you see all of these jumbled dinosaur fossils. And on the other side, there are signs that tell you what you're looking for. Or looking at. This is a Tyrannosaurus rex femur, this is the backbone of an Apatosaurus, this is an Oviraptor neck, etc. It tells you what you're seeing. And then as you're looking, there you go, probably neck of a long plant eater. And then there's this. This is the mural that explains to you how all these fossils got there. And here's what they say. After a seasonal flood, this scene of 145 million years ago is based on clues carcasses brought downstream by fast-moving muddy water. So we read that and we thought, you don't wonder how all the other dinosaur graveyards are explained. So we started typing them in. Dinosaur graveyards, dinosaur fossils. You know what we found out? After a seasonal flood, after a regional flood, after a local flood, after a flood. You know what's interesting? In order to fossilize stuff, you got to bury it real quick, and most of the time there has to be a massive amount of water. Now, what in the world is going to take a dinosaur that has a tail that swings like a cedar and take an entire herd of those and bury them all at once? A humongous flood. You know any floods that could do anything like that? I think you do. Noah's flood. But now here's our question. If God created dinosaurs on the same day as he created humans, and some of them were living after the flood so that people could write about them and call them dragons and carve stuff on the walls, then that means any of them that were land living had to get on the ark. Or you can start having some mental issues with that real quick, can't you? I mean, Jim comes back and his arm's all wrapped up and he says, Ham, your turn to feed the T-Rex. Next week I'm done. Okay, how do you get a 116-foot Apatosaurus and his mate on the ark. I mean, the ark was big, but you're going to start getting pairs of T-Rexes and Apatosauruses and Brachiosaurus. How are you going to fit them on the ark? Good question, isn't it? Well, it actually has a pretty simple answer, one that I never really thought about until I started working on this material. You know, the largest dinosaur egg we've ever found is about 24 inches long. Do you ever read where God says, no, I'm going to bring to you the largest pair of these creatures that I can possibly find so you can put on the ark? You ever read anything like that? Could Noah have taken young dinosaurs and put them on the ark? You know that big 2,000-pound, 24-foot long alligator, how big did he start out? You ever seen an alligator egg? You seen a baby alligator? I've never seen a newborn baby alligator this big. You know why? That's not how they come. They hatch out of an egg, and they're all about 6 or 8 inches long. And a 6 to 8 inch long alligator will then grow to be 2,000 pounds. How big were some of those 116-foot Apatosauruses when they hatched out? They're about 24 inches long. Now, does it make a whole lot of sense that God would bring young animals to Noah to put on that ark so they wouldn't have to feed them as much, they wouldn't have near as much waste, wouldn't have to have near as much room? And then they wouldn't be old, so that when they got off of that ark, they would be in their prime and they would be able to live for many, many years after that and replenish the earth. Does that make perfect sense? Yeah, it does. Now, we've just gone for a good 15 minutes on dinosaurs right here, and people have said for years that dinosaurs are a problem for Bible-believing Christians. Is that true? It's not, is it? In fact, dinosaurs aren't a problem for Bible-believing Christians. The person who takes the Bible and compares it to what we know to be fact will see that dinosaurs fit in perfect with God's creation. In fact, God used a behemoth, a creature that sounds just like a dinosaur, to say, look, Joe, this is how I do things. And this time we take those dinosaurs back and we show our kids a Tyrannosaurus Rex with a 5.5-foot skull, and we say, hey, this dinosaur right here could bite off a single bite of meat that weighed 500 pounds in one bite. Isn't that awesome? You know who made that? God. And God knows what he's doing. You know, we've let people take dinosaurs from us and use them to teach wrong things for years and years. And it's time we take them back. But there's even a greater point that you need to understand. A lot of things get told that just simply aren't true. There's been a lot of stuff told about the Bible that just wasn't true at all. I sat down with a couple atheists and they said, hey, we just can't believe in your God. I said, why not? And so for about 5 minutes they explained to me that for a God to create some people that are created to go to heaven, doesn't matter what they do, and to create other people who are reprobate and they are created to go to hell, and it doesn't matter what they do, they're going to hell, and these people are going to heaven and they don't have any choice in it. That's ridiculous and it's unfair and it's immoral. And I sat there and listened and I said, yeah, you're right. That's crazy. I wouldn't believe in a God like that either. Their eyes got as big as saucers, and they said, what do you mean you wouldn't believe in a God like that? That's what the Bible teaches. I said, no, that's not what the Bible teaches. Then I took them over to a couple verses that say, the soul that sins shall die. The son shall not bear the guilt of the father. The father's not going to bear the guilt of the son. And everybody gets their own freedom to choose. And they said they were 31 years old, had been atheists for years, and they said, we've never come in contact with a person who calls himself a Christian who did not believe in predestination. Has there been a lot of wrong stuff told about what the Bible said? About what really is true, absolutely positively? It might have been told you that all you got to do is just believe in God and you will be fine. It's not true. James chapter 2 says even the demons believe and they tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? No kind of works that can earn you salvation ever in your life. It's an obedient faith that says to God, if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. It's the faith that you see occurring in Acts chapter 2 when the people on the day of Pentecost heard Peter and they asked him, what do we need to do? And he said, repent and be baptized, every one of you, for the forgiveness of their sins. And they, through an obedient working faith, did exactly what Peter said and repented their sins and were baptized into Christ. You know what I think is interesting about people that say baptism is a work? It's something done to you. You don't even do it yourself. It's something that someone does to you because you have, in faith, obeyed a commandment that God gave you. And that day, the people who obeyed the commandment God gave them, 3,000 of them were buried into water baptism, added to the Lord's church, and became New Testament Christians. Same thing that was going on 2,000 years ago can go on today. If you are not a Christian, if you've been told something wrong about the Bible, you can adjust that and get your spiritual situation right with God right now, as we stand and as we sing.